And no surprises at the top of the running backs, right? Barkley, Justin Jackson playing Nevada. I happen to think that's going to be a really good game for Jackson. Nevada moving to that air raid offense. I think Northwestern's going to get the ball a lot. Philip Lindsay, right? Catching the ball out of the backfield. He can do it all, run, catch. You got Royce Freeman at Oregon, who's probably re-energized this year. He should be healthy. I see that Oregon offense really taking off. And then you've got Rashad Penny over at San Diego State. We know what that offense does. Darius Geis over at LSU, a horse. The only if he didn't have an ankle that I was worried about, maybe he's even a little higher, but I think he's going to be okay for that game against BYU. Justice Hill, Mark Walton, and I think Benny Snell at Southern Miss. I'm really high on him this week just because of the matchups. And then you got Jermichael Hasty over at Baylor. He really shot up our list, guys, when Terrence Williams was injured. So just some names to throw out. But, there are a lot of question marks, a lot of highlights I have, some value plays. Let me get on into those guys. As just sticking with the top 10. Anybody can throw out a top 10. It's as you get a little bit later what's going on. Alexander Madison at Boise State. A lot of questions this week. And a lot of questions were, Joe, you were high on this guy. You were telling me to draft him. You've got him ranked 27 this week at home against Troy. What's going on? What's not to like? Well, guys, I'll tell you this. Alexander Madison was sort of missing some time in camp. Whether or not he had an nagging injury, I think that's what played into it. Ryan Wolpen was performing. He was bringing energy. And if you heard any of the interviews that the running backs coach was giving, he was saying Wolpen's going to play. Wolpen brings it every single day. Ryan Wolpen's going to get carries in the first game of the season, guys. In that same interview, he also mentioned that Madison was a 200-plus carry guy. And in a Boise State offense, a 200-plus carry guy, to me, means he's a 250 to 300-plus carry guy. I just don't know if they're going to feed Madison that much in the opening week when Wolpen's ready to play. They're ready to give a few guys some carries. Now, it'll be interesting. If Boise State and Troy are tied up after 3 and going into the fourth quarter, I bet you Madison's in that game for the fourth quarter. But I do think Wolpen will take some value away from him in the first week, whether it's precautionary, whether it's a fitness thing, we'll see. But when the game's on the line, I do expect Madison to be in there. I do expect him to get stats this week. I just don't expect him to be an elite running back this week. So that addresses Alexander Madison. Another situation I'll address is the Wisconsin running back situation. Bradrick Shaw, Chris James, right? Now we got the freshman that figures into the picture. And I don't know really, guys. I think if you play in a 12-team, 20-guy roster, maybe Taylor's worth rostering. But at this particular point, I expect to see Bradrick Shaw and James in there most of the game because James has potential to be a 3-down back. So at the very least, James is going to get the third down work. Shaw will get first and second down. And maybe the freshman comes in every once in a while to spell them. But I see that, to me, the intriguing battle is what happens with Shaw and James. Is Shaw effective enough and has he worked on his pass catching skills enough that he's a 3-down back? I don't know if I feel comfortable with assuming that. Is James that type of back? Yes, I do. But will he be tough enough between the tackles? I think that's going to take a couple of games to play out before we really know who's running back 1 and who's running back 2 up in Wisconsin. The other running back situation that I have to mention is Oklahoma. You've got Abdul Adams, you got Rodney Anderson. Once again, Rodney Anderson emails came pouring in. Joe, you were high on him. What's going on? He's not ranked that high. Remember what I said earlier. It's about security. It's about knowing the guys that are going to be on the field. It's about knowing what you're going to get. I can tell you this, guys. I've seen Abdul Adams play more than I've seen Rodney Anderson. And while I think Rodney Anderson is going to be a really good play, I just don't know if he's 100% ready to go. I mean, he's had it seems like he's lived with non-contact jerseys. I mean, I have to see him in the game. Does Abdul Adams and Rodney Anderson have potential to be Mixon and Pirine Part 2? Probably not that good, but I think they can be something similar. I think they will each have a role, especially early on in the season. And I do think that Adams will be more of a pass-catching threat and Anderson more of that goal line Pirine threat, right? But I do think you're going to get a nice mixture of the two in the run game, and I think that ball is going to be going all over in the pass game too. I'm getting questions on the wide receivers, guys. I'm telling you, we'll know it when we see it. I was high on Jeff Mead. I flip-flopped. I was thinking Mark Andrews was going to be their top guy. Everybody is high on Babbitt from the transfer from Kentucky. Guys, I tell you, I don't know. If I had to put my money on one guy right now, I'm going Jeff Mead, but I don't know if they don't have a D.D. Westbrook. Let me just say that. They do not have a D.D. Westbrook. It'll be really interesting to see what goes on Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield's really set up for a Heisman run because there's nobody that's going to take attention away from him. The only concern I have with Baker Mayfield, let me just get this off my chest right now, is I'm worried about Kyler Murray coming in there every once in a while in the red zone, throwing in a little wildcat, and stealing some touchdowns away from you for college fantasy football reasons. So that's the only thing I'm a little concerned about, and that will be interesting. That'll be an interesting storyline to watch if Kyler Murray gets snaps in some games, which I anticipate that he probably will. But will he get snaps in the red zone? I think that bearings. I think that bearings a watch right there. I think we need to monitor that. And I don't think it'll affect Mayfield that much, but a little bit here or there could cost somebody a game. So let's move on to a couple of other running backs real quick that I think of value plays in week 1. And then there's one more running back that I want to touch on before we move on to the receivers. Week 1, Justin Stockton over at Texas Tech. They're playing Eastern Washington. DeLeon Ward's supposed to rejoin the team. There's nothing definitive yet. He's not returned. Stockton supposedly had a good preseason camp. They're opening up with Eastern Washington. I happen to think Stockton at rank 75, and our rankings might be a little too low. I think that's tremendous value for him, especially if you guys are playing some of the DFS over at FanPicks, which we have a link up on the site. If you haven't seen it yet, click on it. You get a free $10. College football is back in DFS at FanPicks, and if you're interested, check that out, because if you sign up, that's when you're going to want to get the exclusive email, because you're going to want to get these extended rankings and get some of these value plays later on. But Justin Stockton, Texas Tech against Eastern Washington, I think is a real good value play. And I think Sean Wilson over at Duke against NC Central, it'll be real interesting to see how much Daniel Jones incorporates himself into the rushing game, or how much coaches utilize him in a rushing game. I think Sean Wilson could be a nice value play against NC Central as a flex option this week in the opening week. And one guy I want to touch on, and I've gotten a lot of emails on, is Michigan State running back L.J. Scott. I fielded tons of questions on him. As a matter of fact, we have him ranked in the 40s this week. There are guys telling me that they think L.J. Scott is ranked in the top 10 running backs this year. And here's what I say. I don't see it. I know the guy has had all the potential in the world. I remember what he did a couple of years ago in the Big Ten championship game. But you're talking about a guy last year that played on a not-so-good team. He played with banged-up shoulders. His shoulders was so banged up, he had surgery on them, missed entire spring, missed summer workouts, rejoined the team at the end of the summer for preseason camp to get ready for the 2017 season. He's competing with guys like Gerald Holmes and Madre London. Gerald Holmes has such a good reputation on the team. He's one of the captains of the team. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how good Michigan State is this year, one. Because Michigan State's running backs are only as good as their team, because that running game has carried the team in the past. And if they're not ahead late in the fourth quarter, guys, their running backs are missing out on 10 to 12 carries per game. And I just happen to think that Gerald Holmes and Madre London, to some extent, is going to take some value away from L.J. Scott. So you've got a guy, and it's sort of the Eric Dungy effect, right? He's been hurt every year. L.J. Scott always seems to be a little banged up. I'm not ready to proclaim him a top 10 back. So there's my take on L.J. Scott, on why we're not as high on L.J. Scott this year as some of you all are. Hope some of that makes